Hello and welcome, seekers of knowledge. Currently, the sun is out and shining, and it's giving me a glimpse of what spring will be like in a few weeks. I'm so excited. For my first episode, I thought it would be appropriate to discuss what a privacy policy is and why is it important. Because I can read a privacy policy to you, and yet you're wondering, okay, what does this information have to do with me exactly? So, in this episode, I will be discussing in depth about where privacy policies come from, what it's supposed to contain, and what that means to you. So it's first important to know that a privacy policy is a legal requirement set out in data privacy laws. Now, as a data protection officer, my expertise stems from the European data protection laws, and based on that expertise, privacy policies are a requirement of the European Union's General Data Protection Regulation, also known as the GDPR, that regulates the free flow of personal data within and between the Union, other countries, and international organizations by ensuring a high level of protection of personal data. And since 2018, the GDPR has had extraterritorial jurisdiction, which means that companies, whether they are a European business or not, as long as a European citizen's data is being processed, used in any way, such as being collected, filed, stored, all of the jazz, the European Union requires that their rules apply, meaning that these companies must comply with the European Union's data protection rules. Well, there are probably some non European listeners wondering, well, what does this have to do with me? It seems like everything is European. Well, since the GDPR has extraterritorial jurisdiction and many companies operate in the global market, means that at some point these non-European companies would have access to the European market, their data protection standards must be at the highest standard to be accepted by the European Union. And you, my non-European listeners, can benefit from this. So, as stated by the GDPR, companies, websites, and apps that are collecting data must provide transparent information to the persons that they're collecting data from. And to this effect, the privacy policy was created as a method for companies to be transparent with their data subjects. So I know you're probably wondering right now, well, it seems like everywhere I go, even inside my house, everything is, collecting data on me, using my data in some fashion. Will I always be, bombarded with these privacy policies? And I would say yes. Yes, you will be presented a privacy policy whenever your data will be used. And to this, I'm saying, hey, do not look at it in a negative way. Because if you feel like your data is being used too much, you can say no. No, I feel like in this case, no, you don't have any right to my data, and you have every right to say no. So if you want to use a service and you feel like, hey, I don't know why you need to collect my data, in order for you to give me this service, you can tell them that. You can email the company and say, hey, I don't think you have a good enough reason right now to collect any data on me and use my data in any way. And you can use the privacy policies as a way to back up your argument. So, yes, you might be overwhelmed with them, but at the same time, they're there to help you exercise your rights in every way. So, what are these companies, websites, and apps required to put in their privacy policies? Well, there are 9 things that are required of them, and I will list them here for you. So, the first requirement is the contact information and information about the organization and the company itself. So, yes, the company does need to provide this kind of information to you. The second requirement is the reasons as to why they're using your data. Is it to fulfill a contract? Is it because of legal reasons, meaning that the government gave them a legal obligation? The third requirement is, well, what gave them or who gave them permission to even start collecting and using your data? Did you, as a data subject, consent to it? Did the government create a law, a legal obligation that gave them the right to do so? Is it for for fulfilling a contract? Is it to help further their business interest? Or is it for the sake of public interest? The fourth requirement is the type or categories of data that the company or the organization will be using, collecting. Is it user data such as your name, your address, your email address? Or is it technical data such as whether you're using Wi-Fi or your data on your phone? Or is it behavioral data such as how you interact with the website or the app, whether you are on it for long periods of time, short periods of time, what you're searching up, all these different things, data points, they have to let you know what exactly they're collecting from you. The fifth requirement is, well, what other organization or who else has access to this kind of data they're collecting on you? So, what third party organization out there is, using your data as well? And this might be surprising, but a lot of companies use third parties to help them give you the service or the product that you are requiring of them. For example, if you're online shopping, third parties are the ones that are processing your, payment information or are verifying, some data point that they need to prevent any fraud or illegal activity. So, yes. The sixth requirement is to tell you where your data is going to be transferred to. And this is more of a European requirement, because if the data remains within the European Union has certain standards for data flow. and the data flow within their internal market. And every company within that market must adhere to them. As soon as that data leaves the European shores, then that company must provide certain safeguards to ensure that the same protection that the data has within the internal market is also ensured when it leaves. And the European Union has presented companies with many safeguards, such as standard contractual clauses, binding corporate rules, transfer assessment, risk assessment, all these different things. And the company must tell you what safeguards they're putting into place so that you also know that when your data is being transferred to another country, it is achieving the highest possible protection afforded to it. The seventh requirement is retention period. So, how long is the website, the company, the app holding on to your data? Is it until the contract is fulfilled? Is it until you delete the data? Is there a specific retention period required by law? All of these facts must be stated in the privacy policy. The eighth requirement is whether your data is going to be subject to automated decision-making processes. So, whether your data will be subject to a program, and will that decision change your legal circumstances in any way? So, for example, if you go to a bank and you're asking for a loan and a program creates a decision that prevents you from getting that loan, you should know that that decision was done without human intervention, and you can appeal to the bank and say, hey, I would like the decision to be reviewed. The ninth and final requirement required of companies is to list all of your rights. And you have a lot of rights when exercising and protecting your data. So you have the right to have your data deleted. You have the right to object. You have the right to get things revised, amended. You have the right to know and see all of the data that they have collected on you as well. And they should state how you can best exercise these rights. So not just state, hey, you have the right to do this, but they must also give you the pathway to exercise these rights. So based on all of this information, you can decide for yourself, well, is this website, app, company invading my privacy? Because a privacy policy isn't meant to be a liability clause or anything. It isn't supposed to exempt the company from anything, okay? So if you feel like it's being too overly invasive, then you can speak out against it. Okay. There's actually a guy by the name of Max Schrems who has done exactly that in court. And yeah, so he took Facebook to court because of his data was being transferred outside of the EU, and there were no appropriate safeguards when the data arrived in the United States. And he essentially caused a lot of legislation to be completely shredded because of this violation on his fundamental right. So, when I say you should exercise your rights when it comes to your data, you really should. But I do hear from my clients when they tell me that they cannot read privacy policies. And to this, I say, well, if you cannot read a privacy policy, then complain about it. Because the GDPR did say transparent communication. And if the document isn't transparent to you, then complain about it. This is the one legal document that you do not need a legal representation for. You do not need a lawyer to read this document to you. You should be able to read it yourself. And as a legal scholar, there is so much research being done to find the best way to present this information to you. There is so much technology being created for you to feel more protected, to feel more heard by these companies. There are even legal scholars who are pushing for companies to not only see data protection as a legal responsibility, but also as a way for them to have a competitive advantage in this economic era. Because think about it. Wouldn't you want to spend your money at a company that makes you feel like your privacy is being protected? So use your voice, speak out. Write that email to the DPOs. We really do want to hear your opinions. Because when you think about it, some companies can have the opportunity to create a perfect portfolio on you. What you like, what you dislike, where you've been, the people around you. They can even predict how much money you're making. And based on all of this data, they can make future projections on you. And actually, this reminds me of that one season in Westworld where the society predicted certain things of their citizens and caused them to have certain legal consequences. The privacy policy is not a way for companies to get away with things, but for you to hold them accountable. Keep that in mind, okay? Keep that in mind. So, as we move forward in this world where technological advancements are making leaps and bounds, and your data would become the driving force of many companies' stability in this global market, keep in mind that you can tell these companies what they can and cannot do with your data. And with that, I would like to end my discussion on privacy policies. If you want to learn more about data protection, you can also follow me on Instagram at YourPocketDPO. There, I share a lot more data protection and privacy tidbits that you might find interesting and helpful. Now, before I leave you, I would like to end this episode with a little trivia question. my question for you is, organizations should protect personal information by which of the following methods? A. Physical measures, for example, shredding documents, locking desk drawers, having the best security system out there with the cameras and the alarms. Or B, organizational measures, for example, security clearances, which is the ID cards, limiting access on a need to know basis. Or C, technological measures such as the use of passwords and encryption or firewalls, all the cybersecurity jazz. Or D, all of the above. Think about it. Think about what is the most important measure needed to protect your data. And I will share the answer with you on next week's episode. Thank you for sharing your time with me today and gaining some data protection knowledge. And wherever you are in the world, I bid you good day, good evening, and good night. Until next time, bye!